Welcome to the Underwater Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of underwater portrait photography, cinematography, and everything in between. With me, your host, Brett Stanley. Welcome back to episode 11 of the Underwater Podcast, and this week we're getting a little technical with underwater key grip Nicholas Sodapop Franchot, and that's a nickname he's had since high school. So I didn't really go into it with him, but if you ever meet him, you can ask him why he's called Sodapop. Nicholas works alongside underwater camera operators like Ian Takahashi and Pete Romano, both whom have been on the show previously, and you can check out their episodes at theunderwaterpodcast.com. I chat with Nicholas about how he got into the film industry, why he finds vacuuming the bottom of swimming pools like meditation, how he got electrocuted in Brazil, and how to avoid getting a rash from a pee-filled hot tub. All the important questions. Again, it's a little technical, but I don't think you need to know all the jargon to enjoy the stories. All right, let's dive in. Nicholas Sodapop Franchot, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you?
I'm good, Brett. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm into, this is like 2 months into quarantine. I am starting to lose my mind a little bit.
I'm right there with you, my friend. Yes, I'm losing my mind. I personally decided to start a remodel in December of my house, which involved a major remodel, which involved moving out. So I've been on the road, for lack of a better term, since middle of December. And then all the COVID-19 happened. And we've sort of just been playing it by ear. It's very, very jazzy experience, just going along. And, you know, as usual, our construction took longer than projected and went over budget. And I'm not working. And, you know, so it's been a stressful 2 months, but we're getting through it. We're almost to the other side. We just need IKEA to open, and then we can get our kitchen mostly be done, I hope.
Yeah, right. And so does that mean you've actually been like bouncing from house to house? Like you can't live in your house right now?
Yeah, we're out of our house. We rented an apartment not far from our house, and we were going to stay there till the end of April. And that was when our project was projected to finish. But with the pandemic and life and all the rest of it, it took longer, and it takes longer typically even without a pandemic. So now we've moved to a friend's house in Venice, and she graciously is letting us stay there. She is a child at the same age as my children and is a good friend of my wife's, and she's letting us stay in her little guest place, and we're sort of, you know, on the lam, running from the COVID, trying to get our house put back together.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And so when you do go back to the house, is it all going to be like totally finished, or have you then got to clean up and kind of put it back how it was?
The bones will all be there, but we still have to furnish it, you know, which will be, you know, hopefully fun by the end of all this, because we've been working at it for so long that hopefully it's nice and fun and easy to pick some furniture and be in the house and and then enjoy it. And then we get to enjoy it for a little bit. And, you know, I'm sure that the timing will work out to where the moment I get back into the house, work will pick back up and I won't see the house again. But that's life. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so speaking of work, a nice little segue. Mm-hmm. So you're an underwater key grip. Is that what you would call yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I do, you know, regular dry key grip work, and then I do water work as well. I've sort of carved a little niche for myself in the water world just through the graciousness of a lot of people, you know, Pete Romano and Ian and Al Durbino down at Tank One and Rob Trussell at Acton. And I've just been lucky enough to meet all these people, and they've sort of taken me under their wing and showed me how they do it. And you know, so I've garnered information from all those people. Pete was a big influence initially,
right,
in getting me going.
And so just for the non-film people out there, what is a key grip?
Ooh, good question.
Do you know?
I do. It's hard to define, but it's basically electricians provide the light and we shape it.
Right. So you're putting up the stands and
yeah, we change the color of it. We change how sharp a shadow is, how soft a shadow is, how much it wraps, that kind of stuff. And then we also do camera movement, and we're like unpapered engineers. We do rigs and truss and
right. So you're doing the technical setup of a shoot. You're in
Yeah,
there
yeah,
setting up all the hardware and getting it to basically work.
exactly. And choosing the hardware and what works where, and I mean, that's the fun of the water work is you can use stuff in different ways, and that's really when it's fun, when you're sort of pushing the envelope to get the equipment to do stuff that you wouldn't normally think to do, because now you're underwater and there's less weight or more weight, or you know
And are you working with gear underwater that's probably not really designed to be down there?
definitely. But
Yeah.
I mean, the C stand is a C stand is a C stand, and once you dry it off, it's fine, and while it's
Yeah.
wet, it still works. So
So you're repurposing hardware that will do the job, but it wasn't initially designed.
wasn't
to
initially
do that.
designed for it, but it
Yeah.
works. It works, and it gets the job done, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a new way of looking at the same old equipment, essentially.
Right. And so let's take it way back. How did you get into being a grip to start with, before you even got into underwater?
Technically, I'm third generation in this loving industry. My
Yep.
grandmother worked on Broadway, and then my
Yeah.
father, when he was a young man, started in the film industry. That's where he
And were
met.
they grips as well?
Yeah, well, my dad did a lot. He did executive producer when he was younger, and then he moved into bigger projects and started key gripping and gaffing. And
Oh, that's interesting. So he went from executive producer to becoming a grip. So he went from above the line to
yeah, he was above the line producing a documentary,
right.
as far as I know. And then that's where he met my mom.
Yep.
And then they moved to LA, and then they had me, and I have a brother and a sister, and we're all in the film industry in various capacities.
Wow. So full family business.
Essentially, yeah. And then I was sort of I don't know, the black sheep, and I stuck with gripping. My brother's
Oh, okay.
is a producer and a director, and my sister's talent management.
Right.
But I remember the discussion with my dad about, I would work with him quite a bit during summer break or weekends or whatever, and we would talk about it. And I said, "What do you enjoy more, gaffing or keying?" And he said, "Well, key gripping is more challenging and fun on the whole."
Right.
And I remember it, and that sort of stuck with me, and I just went down the world of key gripping.
Oh, okay.
But I started as a hammer, and then way back in the day, I turned union on White Man's Burden with
Yeah.
Harry Belafonte and John Travolta, and then music videos, and then features, Independence Day, Starship Troopers, Night at the Roxbury, a bunch of stuff with Lauren Coral. And Lauren Coral's a guy that my dad started. So there's been nepotism in my history for sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And were you working on sets with your dad?
Oh, yes. Some of my favorite memories. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. It was really the only career path you saw for yourself?
No, I mean, I started young. I did my first paying job at 11, working for my dad.
Right.
I got paid $150. And at an 11-year-old, $150 is equivalent to, $650 now.
Oh, God,
So
yeah.
I thought I was like, I'm never going to have to work again. I just made $150.
Oh, yeah, that's
Never
a lot
going
of
to have
candy.
to. I can invest this and just never work again.
That's
So
right.
I got roped into the pay for the work, and I loved the set dynamic, and it was different then before we had walkies and all that. But it was it was a pleasure to work on a set with people who knew what they were doing and getting stuff done, and it was. So I just got sucked into it. I loved it. It was easy money. I got paid well to do a decent day's work, and then you went home and came back and did it again the next day, and it was just rewarding. I enjoyed it, and I went into working in the industry straight out of high school and never
Right.
looked back.
Yeah. Was there things that you loved about it? Was it the camaraderie of being on the set, or was it the kind of problem solving that you had to do to make these things work?
It was both. It was the camaraderie of solving problems together and how to do it. It was, having a
Yeah.
plan and everybody sort of has their own protocols, and you just use those to get you where you want to go. And it's when you do a good rig, it feels good. It's working with your hands, and that's always been gratifying for me.
Do you find that there's a creative side to that as well, where you're, they come to you with a problem and the solving of that is kind of creative, where you have to get creative to solve that problem?
That's the that's the draw. That's what sucks you in. That's what's fun. And then as you get better and better at it and do it more and more, you can incorporate more creativity into the parameters of your work.
Yeah. And then, so how did you go from being a dry key grip to then moving into the underwater world?
Music videos.
Yeah, right.
Videos. I was just a grip. I was working for Bill Buckingham at Hillbilly, and we were doing a music video, and they needed a shot of somebody falling in the water, and there was flames bubbling up through the water, and I saw the Hydroflex deep water housing for the first time, and they said, we need tanks. And I said, well, I have my open water card. We can get tanks.
Yeah.
And that turned into me doing a couple music videos, just stupid, simple, get the camera in the water and point it up, and usually somebody's falling in the water and sinking, and that was the shot. And we did it multiple times, or somebody's singing underwater, and then that just turned into, I'd done it a few times, and then War of the Worlds was the first major motion picture that I was on, and I just met people through that. I met some of the bigger guys in water work at that time. And
so who were you working with? Was that Pete?
That was not Pete. That I was doing a lot of just gripping, just moving scaffolding around underwater. It was the whole scene where the rear of the boat, the propeller of the boat comes out of the giant ship, comes out of the water, and there's stuntmen falling in the water, and it was a giant water unit, and I was just a hammer on it.
Right.
But that gave me the opportunity to meet other people who do water work, and then you invest in the gear, and you get the right gear for the job. In terms of scuba diving, in terms of BCDs, and you get a tech pack, and you get your various wetsuits and smaller fins for working in tanks, and and you apply yourself. And then another guy that my father had started, Jason Poteet, was a guy I ran into at work, and he was gripping underwater for Pete Romano. And, and that was my link to Pete, and I worked for Pete for quite a while, a few years, me and Andy Huber, and we all worked together, and it was a great period. And Pete was an incredible teacher and mentor, and then he got some jobs off in England for a while, and I wasn't there or able to go there or invited, really, but but by that time I had made ends at Tank One with Al Garbino, and I had made ends at Acton with Rob Trussell,
which are both underwater stages in the LA district.
Yeah,
so and Tank One is down in Signal Hill. Well, actually, it's gone now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gone now. Unfortunately, I hear it's moved to, of all places, Boulder, Colorado.
Has it actually been reset up as a tank, or
I
is
believe
it just
so? Apparently, there's a large amount of underwater or of open water dive certs that are done in Colorado, of all places.
Wow. So that's what they're using it for, just doing certs.
I believe last time I talked to Jay, I think that's what was going on. So
wow. So it's been retired.
It's been retired, and that was a great spot. I loved it, and I was there from the initial setup of it, and I gave some input on, oftentimes we cover the tank with a diffusion or a solid to take the sun out, and I gave them advice on rig points and how to make it, make that happen fast and easy and less more cost effective. And then I sort of just became their guy over there. And if they had a production come in and they wanted grips and they wanted to rig it out, then Al would suggest strongly that they use me, and that sort of became what it was. And then that just gave me experience upon experience and working with great people and different people. And then, Tank One closed, and I'd been working at Acton previous to that and working with Rob and, all the offshore grip marine and just a whole bunch of people. And I'd sort of got my foot in the door by that point. And then, it just, here it is now. I wish I was doing more open water work in the actual ocean and getting some more dive time there. But I've sort of been a tank baby for the past 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, so that's an interesting point. So, I mean, if you're shooting a production, you generally want to do it as controlled as possible, which is why they tend to jump into a tank and fake it a little bit if it's meant to be open water.
Yeah, if there's talent, you need to do that.
Right.
I mean, unless your talent happens to be a water person and pretty efficient in the water, but the water will humble you rapidly.
Yeah, and so that's the difference between working in a tank and working in open water, is that it's a lot safer and it's a lot easier in a tank, right?
Way safer and way easier and way more controlled. And, you can actually light something. You can do it in open water, but once you're past, 10 or 15 feet underwater, you're not really going to produce a light above water that's going to do much.
Yeah. So now you're taking lights down with you.
Right. And then you're in open water and you got to maintain your buoyancy and keep your levels. And, you can't float up or down if you're doing that. And it just gets way complicated.
Yeah. So what are some of the open water productions you've done?
Mostly just in the surf with Ian, just in the surf line or just past the surf line. The standards are somebody swimming right past the break line or somebody surfing, obviously in the surf. And, that usually entails you're standing or barely standing and getting pounded by waves and going under and over and holding on to the pill or back in the day, the deep water and trying to get it through the wave and get a shot and survive and come out the other side.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So, I mean, you're basically the camera operator's like right-hand man, like you're there beside them, helping them maneuver that camera?
Yes. And you're holding the camera when they're not holding it. So, when the talent's getting instruction or the shooter's getting instruction, you're there in the surf taking the pounding with the pill or you're holding the camera underwater and getting notes from the hydrophone you're sort of, you got to work with the first AC. The first AC does his best work dry because he needs to be able to touch the camera and be dry. So you sort of, it's a little bit of a gray area between the first AC and the key grip, just in keeping the camera where it should be and working as it should.
Right. And that's a good point because there is that, it's a hierarchy, but it's also a kind of a set of skills when you start going into the water with a camera because you need someone who's on the dry side so they can do stuff like the camera tech and the first AC.
Yeah.
And then once you hit the water side, then there's a whole nother kind of set of crew, right?
Essentially, yes. I mean, it's from what I understand, it's pretty difficult to pull focus underwater given the technology that they have now where you can have a hard line to a monitor and most guys pull off a monitor anyways, pull focus off a monitor anyways. So it just makes more sense that they're on land. Yeah.
So you've got your AC, which is your first assistant camera.
Yeah.
And they're up there basically with the controls for the camera. And the camera operator is kind of just pointing it in the right direction and making those movements.
Yeah. And we're, and we build rigs or put ladders or, Ian's got a great float for the camera so you can go from surface to underwater, which is a challenge due to buoyancy. And you just sort of work those things out. And I mean, you as with any crew, once you work together for a while, you get to a shorthand of how things are, discussing how things are going to work, which increases efficiency and makes the job easier. And then, after 10 or 15 jobs with a person, you know how they like to do it. And then, you know how they respond to all the situations and you just help, you facilitate.
Yeah. And I guess you've got like one eye on, you're looking at everything in that scene to make sure that whatever's happening is happening correctly and jumping in if something needs to be fixed or changed or adjusted.
Yes. And it's, I mean, it's a whole team. I mean, all the water guys from the stunt guys to the grips, to the electricians, to the, art department, we all sort of, once you're in the water, we all sort of band together into one unit.
Which is interesting because you've got once you're under the water, there's no communication between you guys except for hand signals.
Hand signs and, you can make some noises by clapping your hands together properly or tank bangers or something. But typically the guys that I work with, most often we all know each other and I'll jump in and help them with safety, or they'll jump in and help me with setting a stand or moving something if I need help. And we sort of, secretly underwater cross some lines.
Right. Yeah. Because you're covering each other's work because it's a lot easier because you might be on that side of the tank to be able to do that thing.
Exactly. And then there's all kinds of, little things that come up, bubbles. If you would swim across the tank to get it, as opposed to somebody just getting it while they're there, then you're not stirring up the water and you're not possibly mucking up the shot or getting bubbles or micro bubbles or any of that little, stuff. And we're all there to get out of there. We're all there to get the shot, get it exactly what they want, and then move on. And that's the reward, is the moving on.
And so let's talk about some of the actual setups you've done. Are there ones that come to mind for you that you were just so proud of? that were just like, how am I going to do this? And then you totally worked it out?
I don't know. They're all variations of a theme. There's been ones that were incredibly trying, 20 hours in the water on, I think it was Nicki Minaj, walking back to the car with my feet so pruned it hurt to stand on them.
Right.
Green screen everywhere, that was at Acton, I believe, and building Rob's tank out make it look like a lake with dunking a truck in it and platforms. And the Steph Curry job that I did with Ian was really fun just because of the challenges. We only had him for a little bit. We had to black out that tank which was not a tank that we typically shoot at. So we had to black that whole thing out. And, we had another scene where we were doing dry work, and that was a challenge. I like the challenges. The challenge is what it's about. I mean, there's been plenty of jobs where you just show up and, they need 3 shots and you get your 3 shots and you're done. And those are fun. And, you feel good about what you did just because it was efficient. But, it's the ones where there's an extra challenge. I mean, that's really why I got into water work in the first place.
To challenge yourself, to keep it interesting.
Yeah, just to keep learning.
Yeah. So that the Steph Curry one you mentioned, that's it's when he's kind of playing basketball underwater.
Yeah, and the hoops are moving like squids or jellyfish. I mean, and that was it. He was in a flotation chamber, and then it turns into him underwater, and part of his meditation to get ready for a game. And yeah, that was the one. Ian, I think, won an award or 2 for that one.
Yeah, I think that was a Clio award, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so what were the difficulties on that shot? Because I mean, from memory, I think you've got and I don't know whether they're all been composited in or not, but there's a whole bunch of basketballs under the water with him.
Yeah, basketballs, and basketballs are filled with air and want to float. So we had to figure out how to get water in the basketballs, and then we had to figure out how to get the right amount of water to actually get neutral and buoyancy, to get the water or the balls to do what we want. And there was, basketball nets floating around, and that was all shot practically, and probably is most likely a big part of why it looked so good, that job.
Yeah, because it was all done in real life as opposed to being done in a computer.
Yeah, it was practical, and it was and the whole crew on that was up to snuff in terms of working in the water and figuring out the how we were going to get it done. I mean, initially we were talking about blacking out the whole entire Olympic-sized swimming pool building. And that would have taken a lot of guys and a lot of time and a lot of money. And then I said, well, we could just shoot it at night. And they went, oh, yeah, we could just shoot it at night. And then we don't have to black anything out.
Yeah.
So we went that way, and that saved a lot of money and time and wasted energy. And then all I had to do was black out that tank and make sure that we could keep the filters running for 24 hours while we let the water clear out after we introduce, what are supposed to be clean solids, but they always muck up the water a bit.
Yeah.
So we just figured out how to leave the filters running and have the blacks over the filter covers, but still let the water cycle. And unfortunately, I had to cut some rags, which I'm sure, somebody didn't like, but it was the only real way to get it done.
Yeah, I think when I spoke to Ian, he was talking about this so you had this swimming pool, which was, as you say, I think it was like an Olympic swimming pool. Mm-hmm. And to be able to leave it overnight to clean, because your water solids, which are basically big black fabrics, had put stuff into the water, and then those fabrics also sit over the top of the grills on the bottom of the pool.
Exactly. Yeah. And
so you had to find a way to make them still cycle with that fabric there. And
still be black, but so, we just run the filters and then we just covered it over. I think we used some milk crates to create a channel, and just, it's a lot of it's thinking on the fly. I mean, I knew there were filters and I knew we'd have to deal with it, but I didn't know where they were going to fall within the rad once I got up there and got in the water with them.
Yeah.
So we just decided to go that route, and it worked. And, the shot was that obviously Steph was in the water in the shot, and that was part of the look, but they didn't want it to look like he was, they didn't want to see the water. So we needed it as clean as possible. So that was the solve for that.
And how much of your work is spent sort of doing that? How much time do you spend blacking out a pool and cleaning the water and vacuuming it and things like that? Is that a large part of your time?
It's a part of every job. I love vacuuming tanks. It's weird.
Right.
It's like meditation.
Yeah.
I start a job typically the day before, like at we'll put the blacks in the day before, put the solids in the day before. And then we'll try and get the pumps going and the filters going, and then suck because no matter what, there's dirt, there's dust, there's something on the black or the whatever fabric you're putting in. And so you just need that time to let the filters do their job. And then typically you come back and you start the next day and you leave your fins off and you get your buoyancy right, and you go down to the bottom with a vacuum and you suck up whatever you can. And then off you go. I mean, even indoor swimming pools, when I come back the day after putting rags in, there's stuff collected on them that's fallen out of the sky or the rafters or whatever. You just go in and you get to put on some diving skills and don't muck up the bottom and float around and vacuum and suck all the dirt out, and then you start your day.
It's an interesting thing, I think, being in this side of the industry where water quality is such a huge part of your life. And for me, coming from the photography side, you can look at a swimming pool from the surface and it might look crystal clear, but it's not until you get into the water and you can then see all that crap floating in it.
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of possibilities, from micro bubbles to a windy day, it can all change what it looks like under there.
Yeah. Have you ever had a job where the brief has totally changed because the water clarity hasn't been what it's needed to be?
Not completely. We, for water clarity, typically you got to get that work done beforehand and ensure that it's going to be clean.
Right.
There's no real, yes, we've had water that was less than ideal, but you sort of there's not a lot you can do on the day.
Yeah.
To solve water clarity. So you have to have addressed it before the shoot day.
Right. So I follow Ian's Instagram, and he every now and again posts a pretty cool behind the scenes shot of a production that he's been on. And one of the ones that really stuck in my mind was the underwater shot from Between Two Ferns movie.
Yeah.
Where, do you want to set that up? Do you want to let us know what that scene was?
Zach Galifianakis is supposed to be in a room that's filling with water, and we wanted to see the window. There was a window between the room we're in shooting from and the room that he's in, and we wanted to see that. So we had to set up Lexan as a window, but underwater, and we didn't want to see the water on our side, but we wanted him in the water on the other side. So again, we're talking about water clarity, and one of the things that helps with water clarity is killing the direct sun, taking it out, just so it's not so backlit, so you see less particle in the water. And then you can add the light later where you want it. So I had to black out around the Lexan, and then we used Asteratubes around that. That was
so the Lexan is like an acrylic.
Yeah, it's a window.
Glass,
it's a thick window that's not going to break underwater.
Yeah.
So we just had to set up that Lexan and get it so that everything was sort of giving us the image that we want, where you could see the water when you wanted to and not when you didn't.
Yeah. And so this was, instead of building a tank and filling up a room, you were faking the idea of that room being full of water by building a fake window under the water. Yeah, to shoot through.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how was that setting it up? Like, were there reflections and stuff you had to make sure you got rid of? And was there like green screen involved, or was it pretty straightforward?
I believe that was a lot of solids. I don't think we did green. I think we did that one all on solids. I can't recall directly. They all sort of blend together for me.
Yeah.
Whether it's dry work or wet work. I mean, it's hard. I remember Nicki Minaj because it was 20 hours and it hurt.
You always remember the pain.
Yes. So yeah, that was out at Acton, and Rob has it set up out there to where it's easy to tent out that pool. And so it was work, but the challenges weren't new or too difficult.
Yeah.
And then it just having worked out there and worked with Rob and Ian, we just figured it out. And, the real fun one on that one was Ian and I got to do some dump tank work, which is always fun because you just basically give Ian a pat on the back and say, have fun. We'll try and hold you here.
So what does that mean? So dump tank is when you've got a tank full of water and you're dumping it into the scene?
You're dumping it into the set. And so it's, water rushing through the set at a high speed, much like a raging river. And a lot of the time that's when we get to sort of grab Ian. I've done it quite a bit of it with him, and you just grab him and You either tie him down or try and hold him in spot, depending on the
Yeah,
shot.
right. Yeah.
It's a lot
So if
like,
the water's rushing past him and he's got to hold his spot, then you're tying him down to something?
yeah, if it's safe, or just physically holding him, or, it's
Yeah.
the dunk take is similar to working in the surf in that you just kind of get beat up, but it's fun and you're there together. And,
Yeah.
when the tape's over, you check each other and make sure everybody's all right. And Whew, made it again. That was fun.
Yeah. Have you ever had that sort of situation where it hasn't gone very well, like
Mm-hmm.
in the surf or something? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, lots of bloody knuckles coming out of the water from just holding the camera and taking it from the surf. And then the same thing in dunk takes. It's just, you just kind of got to take it. And that's half the fun. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you just sort of try and just power through it, get through it, and enjoy the challenge. It's, it's water. It's not going to do the same thing every time. It's not going to, you have an idea and then you just kind of make it work. You power through it.
Yeah.
And Ian's a pleasure to work with, in all regards, but especially in that, because he's positive and he's strong and he gets it, and you just do it. And that's, that's the fun. And
I get the feeling that Ian loves that side of things as well.
yeah, we sort of relish that, Yeah. It's
the adrenaline side of it.
Yeah, it's just the thrill. Like, again, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. It's water. And so you just sort of, it's a thrill. It's a challenge. It's a thrill. It's an adrenaline rush. It's, typically it seems a lot scarier than it ever is, when you're getting ready for it, and then you do it and you're like, oh, that was nothing. Or holy shit.
Yeah.
We didn't know it was going to do that. But that doesn't happen as often as the other way around, where we, it usually we're pretty on target with what we think's going to happen, the results we get. And Ian's a great operator, and
and you guys have been doing that for so long that you kind of have a good idea of how things are going to go. You can predict what may happen.
We've certainly gotten better at it than when we first started. Yes. Yeah.
So do you have a story that is the one thing, the thing you'll never do again?
The thing I'll never do again.
Something that just went so sideways, you're like, yeah, no, not doing that one again.
No, I don't really.
What?
I haven't done. I think that happens more in open water.
Yeah.
I don't think, if you know what you're doing, that shouldn't really be happening in a tank. That's also part of why I'd like to start doing more open water work, just because the tank it's fun and I love it and I don't ever want to stop. But the open water seems to be the next real level to shooting, but that typically doesn't have talent. So now we're talking about nature documentaries or Shark Week or.
Okay. So you're gripping on those sort of documentaries?
I would like to be. I have not yet.
Okay. So what does that look like in terms of the workload? What would you be doing if you're...
It would change. It'd be a lot less fabric in the water.
Yeah.
And a lot more probably just camera movement, figuring out how to move a camera underwater for a predictable amount of time and length.
Yeah.
Maybe some handheld smaller units to light inside a scuba mask, or get some fill on somebody. But again, like I said earlier, it's not often you take talent into open water, certainly not on scuba, unless they have experience. And there's not a lot of them that have experience. It's the old resume says one thing, and then once you're in the water, it says another thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the studios aren't willing to risk their talent doing that anyway.
No.
Yeah.
No. But I mean, I know that there's plenty of open water work out there. Not right now, but it's just it's less common than being in a tank, I would say.
Yeah. Do you find that the open water stuff is a smaller crew as well? Like it's a bit more everyone jumping in and doing it?
It has to be. Just you can't. There's no way you could monitor a typical film set and then just take it underwater and keep it safe with that many people, with 7 PAs and art department and grip and electric and camera. Like, you just don't put all those people in the water. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way. That's a good kind of segue into talking about safety, actually. So when you've got that many people in the water and you're dealing with electricity and, electrical gear, how does that work from your point of view? What are you doing to kind of keep everything safe? Is it just being aware of how this stuff works, or are you kind of relying on your other team members to keep things safe?
You rely on electric, who's putting the electricity in the water. You check and make sure that there's, they're properly grounded and that they've got the circuit breakers, not the circuit breakers, the ground fault indicators, GFIs, in place so that if electricity does start going in the water, it shuts off immediately. Having been bit underwater once before in my life, bit being slightly electrocuted, it's not fun, and it wakes you right up and you don't want to do it again. So you pay attention to that.
Yeah. So how did that happen? Was that something that went wrong on a set?
Yeah. I got this great phone call, and it started with, would you like to go to Brazil for 2 weeks to do underwater work? And I thought, yes, Brazil. How could that go wrong? And I spent a week and a half in a tank, nowhere near the ocean in Brazil, shooting in the water. And the grip crew down there was awesome. They were incredible. They made, they don't have a rental house to go to get C-stand. So they made their own, and they were they were incredible. And they had built this whole truss rig that we put in the water with a bridge that rolls. And it was a giant rig. They did it all without getting in the water. And then Andy Huber and I got down there with our 50 cases from Hydroflex and got on the water. And there was a small short between the motor for the filters and the truss rig. Somehow they got connected, and I touched a piece of truss and I got a shock. And Andy Huber says that when I swam over to him to tell him about it after I disassociated myself from the shock, that my eyeballs were filling my dive mask.
Oh my God, your eyes were watering.
No, just that big.
Huge. Oh God.
And I told him what had happened, and we worked it out, and basically we just killed the power to that motor that was powering the filter. And
how do you work that out, though? How do you work out that it's that one thing that you guys haven't put in there?
It was a challenge because down there in Brazil, they use a power supply system called Delta Power, and our GFIs were not working with the Delta Power. The Delta Power
weren't tripping.
They would trip because the Delta Power was dirtier than electricity that the GFIs were set to work with.
Got it. Yeah.
So in that instance, basically, we took the GFIs out of line, and we ran a 10-foot copper pipe 6 feet in the ground and grounded the generator really well. And we had a guy who every 30 minutes would pour a couple gallons of water around the grounded pipe, just to keep the electricity wanting to go that way should anything go wrong. And we didn't use any of the GFIs.
Wow. Okay.
And so then when I got bit, that changed the whole dynamic of it. And then we're like, well, where is that coming from? So underwater, you can sort of feel an electrical field before you're actually in it, if you know.
Like a tingle.
Yep. So we shut all the lights off and we went back down and checked it out, and we were still getting tingly. And so we, through that, deduced that the problem was not with our power, but with something else. And then we shut off the filters, which we'd been mucking with anyways because they were causing microbubbles. And we figured out that once the filters were shut off, we weren't getting that tingle anymore.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then, we deduced that it was the motor for the filters that was not properly grounded.
God, that's such a interesting way of problem solving that potentially life-threatening issue.
And it was, there was a lot of issues building up on that. So we had to figure it out on the fly. I mean, we didn't fly down with 50 cases of lights and GFIs not to use the GFIs. But once we got down there, we had to deal with that. There was no way to get power that was clean enough for the GFIs to work properly. And that was just a dynamic of the job. We didn't, there was no way to tell that until you were there, really.
Yeah.
But now that, or at least there wasn't for me, I didn't have the experience yet.
Yeah. And so how much of the electrical stuff do you understand? Like, are you relying on the electrician to kind of know how all that works, or have you got a good understanding of how electricity and water
I have a pretty good understanding of it. I was an electrician for my dad as well as a grip. So I know how to run power, and I know, what a GFI is doing in the day. And I have a decent understanding of power. I'm no electrician, and I certainly don't wire a lot of things around my house, but I understand it enough to get myself in trouble and understand what's going on.
Right. Are there any other productions that you want to talk about? Any other interesting things? I know they all blend into one after a while.
Yeah, they're sort of a mix. I mean, War of the Worlds was really what opened my eyes to what underwater production work was really like. It was it was a less than awesome experience, but it was also awesome at the same time. But I got a rash from working, days on days in and out of the water. And I made the rookie mistake of getting in the hot tub that we were sharing with the stunt guys.
Oh,
And the stunt guys spent, hours on these platforms getting ready before they would jump in the water. And the water was freezing cold. So they're in wetsuits. And then, so what they would do is they would, after a few hours in a wetsuit on a platform getting ready to get the shot, you have to use the bathroom.
yeah, you got to pee.
And they would do that in their wetsuit, as we all do. As there's two kinds of divers: those that pee in their wetsuits and those that lie about it.
Yeah.
So that was what they were doing. And then, it was cold water. So they'd come out of the water and they'd get in the hot tub. And the hot tub became a cesspool within a few days. But we didn't know that within the first couple of days. And we're all acclimating to this frigid water. So we'd get out, and warm up real quick in the hot tub. And then, I got a what they called shingles from it. And, that was a learning experience. And it just, it sort of instilled in me the idea of just constantly watching your own back and monitoring your own situation, which is a big part of being able to do underwater work, so that you're not a hindrance, but you're an asset.
Yeah. Yeah. Keeping yourself in the best shape that you can be, not expecting everyone else to do that for you.
Right.
Yeah. And so War of the Worlds, was that your first major production?
Yes.
Underwater.
Yes. Yeah. And then I did some water safety after that on Poseidon. And
yeah. And so what's coming up? Have you got projects that are in the pipeline, or are you kind of just in limbo like most of the industry, or are there things that you were on and then you had to put on pause?
I'm in complete limbo. Yeah, there's nibbles, there's prospects, but I wouldn't put any money on them right now.
Yeah.
There's ideas, and there's we all definitely want to get back to work, and we all want to start doing it, but we have to do it safe and smart. And it seems to me that working underwater would be a great way to get around the COVID-19 thing.
Yeah.
Then you get to sharing regs, and who knows how that really works.
Oh, exactly. There's only so many times you can disinfect a reg, I think, every time you put it in your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I guess the chlorine's doing the work, hopefully. And, it would be fine, but you still need dry help, and you need to, somebody's going to have to figure out the protocol for that. And it just doesn't seem to be happening real quick in the film industry.
No, I think it's going to be interesting in the next few months as to how they work out to make it work. I have heard of productions just quarantining the entire crew.
Yes, that's what one of my friends is working on. He's in a situation where he's not in the city, and he's basically creating a whole production team of people that have been quarantined, what he's calling his quarantine circle, and getting ready to start proposing projects to clients with his team of people that have been quarantined, and he's sort of with, and he lives out of the city, and he lives in the Sierras, so he's got beautiful country around him to shoot. He's got all the equipment that he needs to get the image to an editor, and then you just start making your friends' talent, I guess, and go to there.
Yeah. It's such an interesting change that's going to happen. I think it's like having, like you're going to have to be certified healthy or certified quarantined. And if you have a whole crew like that, then, you'll be the go-to kind of people because you've been quarantined and you're, I don't know, like you're certified fresh, like it's.
Well, that was sort of the protocol before, when the pandemic was just starting to hit, before they shut down the industry. I had a job, and basically we all knew about COVID. It was the last job that I was supposed to be on. It actually didn't shoot, but we all knew that COVID was around and how scary it was. And they just had us all, sign a paper saying, yes, we've not traveled out of the country. We do not believe we've been exposed to it.
Yeah.
We'll quarantine for a week before the job. And they didn't eventually do the job, but that was sort of the protocol. And it's going to have to be some variants of that. It's all pretty crazy. I don't know, half of me wants to just get out of the city and be done with this career, but I love it, and I don't really see that happening. But it's a crazy new dynamic to add into what was already a pretty fanciful and crazy industry.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, and I think it'll be interesting like in 12, 18 months time to see the productions that have been made in this climate and just see how different they are, see what techniques people have used, whether
Yeah.
there's, a lot less background players, a lot less extras going on, and, how they've I think there'll be a lot of animation coming out.
Yeah, there's talk of animation. There's video game stories, where it's more computer generated characters and you sort of play the story, I think is another thing I've seen happening.
Yeah, right.
I was always a commercial key drip. I did a few features and stuff, but it'll be interesting to see if commercials come back like they were.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's commercials that are coming out now and you're like, how are they even shooting this? But then you realize it's all stock.
Yep. There's a lot of that.
Maybe that's how it's going to go.
It seems, and I mean, it's not so much a storytelling experience on a commercial as a selling the thing experience. So it seems on that level that it would be easier to just start putting commercials back out there because there's less concern about the story.
Yeah, true.
And keeping your talent healthy and your director and your DP healthy and, those sort of dynamics.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. We don't know for sure,
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thanks, Sodapop. This has been awesome.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Good to hear the other side of it, man. It's, I don't think the grips get enough rep. I don't think you guys get enough credit for what you guys are doing. You're in the front line there.
Yeah, we sort of are. I mean, yes, and I have mixed feelings about that statement, really. I mean, we get credit. We're drips, and what we do is sometimes awesome and sometimes pretty regular, and we get paid well and we get fed well, and
yeah.
But, I mean, yes, it's true. Not a lot of people know what a grip is, and I both love and hate explaining it because it's hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's grips are weird people. We're good, hardworking people, but we're all sort of a mix of weird blue collarness, and we're thrown into the entertainment industry, which is not necessarily a blue collar industry.
No, you're like a trade that's been thrown into the creative world.
Yeah, and that's it's when gripping is the most fun is when you're able to do your trade and be creative with it, and that's the payoff, right? That's when that's when it's fun.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks, Soda. It's been awesome having you on, man.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's always good to talk about our trades, especially when we're not doing them. Keep the magic alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, man. We'll speak to you soon.
All right, Brett. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And as always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe. If you'd like to connect with us or just learn more about my guests, you can hit our website at theunderwaterpodcast.com or on Instagram or Facebook. Also check out our regular live streams on YouTube. Links will be in the show notes. If you'd like to know more about my underwater photography workshops and mentoring, you can find me at brettstanley.com. The Underwater Podcast is presented and produced by me, Brett Stanley, and our music is Neo by Oh Boy. Keep creating, everyone. I'll see you in the water.